Greetings, my name is Rudimentary Rob. Welcome back to my Raft series. Today we pick up where we left off at this lovely, great, big, amazing, but very crashed ocean liner with creepy rats on it. So strap yourself in. I would say pull out your favourite pair of swim fins again, and let's see what we get up to this episode. Alright, now you'll remember in the previous episode that we actually did all of the storyline stuff and we wrapped everything up very neatly inside the name of this boat, which is very long and quite unpronounceable after a long week at work. Yeah, I'm doing this audio on a Friday evening. It happens. So we didn't do any of the outside, like any of this area that's off the boat in the previous episode. So we left that to do separately because, the boat takes a while and I didn't want to cram all of this into one episode because it was going to feel too rushed and I'd run a risk of just, accidentally leaving something out that's relevant to the story. So everything outside the boat here is just regular old raft gathering. There's nothing to advance the storyline out here. As I indicated in the previous episode, there is a couple of mechanical parts out here. Because we've actually already done the carjack thing, which is what the mechanical parts are for. These mechanical parts, they're just pretty much useless at this stage as far as I can remember. I can't remember if they come up in future. I doubt it. Just to cover you, I would say get them anyway, and we'll discover in the future whether they are really that relevant or whether they're just going to occupy some space in my quest log and have absolutely no bearing on any other aspect of the game. Now, in our explorations around the boat here, I'm just swimming out a little bit just to confirm my suspicion that there is actually nothing outside this kind of ring of rocks around the boat. So having done that now, we are back to gathering, and we're just picking up everything. We're about to do some very, very, very wanted and long-needed upgrades to the raft this episode. And the components, metal, etc. required are definitely not what I would call trivial. So we want everything we can get our little hook on at this stage. So if it's a tree, we're chopping it down. If it's scrap metal, if it's whatever, we're picking it up. And we're going to make sure we clear this island quite thoroughly before we move on. That said, though, we're just about done at this stage, to be honest. I think we've got this tree, maybe another one or two to go. A couple of more bits of scrap in the water, and then that's it. We'll get back to the raft, do a bit of an unload, and we'll pick up the commentary from there. Alright, now that we've done a bit of housekeeping and we've put our odds and sods away, can anyone remember what the blueprints were that we managed to retrieve off that boat? Because there was two very good blueprints that we got. Anyone want to hazard a guess or remember what they were? I know we got a few, cooking recipes, and some of those are going to be very handy. But we actually got some blueprints. I'll let you have a bit of a think about what those could be. While you're getting a bit of thinking time going, we're just going to cast off from here so we can sort of start drifting and start gathering some more resources. See what you think what those blueprints might have been. Alright, well, we were given some coordinates as well. The coordinates for the next location, well, the location is called Balboa, and even being exhausted on a Friday evening, I think I can pronounce that one okay. It's 3751, so we're just going to enter that into our little nav computer here, and we can see that we've got a blip. It's ahead, kind of 45 degrees off to the left. I'm not sure why I'm looking in that direction. Anyway, whatevs. We are going to run into a bit of a problem, though. If you looked at the way the wind was blowing, that next nav location is actually against the wind. So, yeah, I'm looking at the sails going, we're not really going to be able to head over in that direction very effectively. Because the wind is coming from the animal end of the boat, basically. I'm calling that the front of the boat. And if you've ever sailed or you know anything about sails, sailing directly into the wind, yeah, that's not going to happen. You can make an attempt to, sail, sort of tack back and forth, port and starboard on different headings to try and make ground, so to speak, in that direction. But that doesn't work very well in Raft. You don't make much headway when you're getting close to being into the wind, and that's kind of what you've got to do in a practical sense. So, we've now gone to our table, and we're going to see what we can do about that. Now, you've had a bit of thinking time. The two recipes that we have now is the steering wheel and the engine. Now, the steering wheel is important because that allows us to reorient the raft without having to try and bump into things to do that for us. The engines, well, that's pretty obvious what they're going to do for us. So this is where you're going to be at. If you've been to the Vastagan or whatever that boat was called, understand that every time that I've finished with the Vastagan, the next location has almost always had very unfavourable winds to try and get to it. Now, it's not to say you can't get to it. It's just going to take you a lot of time and a lot of very, patient calculations with your sailing courses and things like that. I'm not that patient, and I don't feel like editing about 4 hours worth of footage down to a 30-minute video just because it took me 4 hours to sail from point A to point B. I'd like to have some, some other things to do. So rather than going down that road, we are actually going to make ourselves the steering wheel, and we're going to make ourselves a couple of engines. Now, in retrospect, I probably only needed the one engine. I end up making two, because with engines, the fuel works out on a runtime. So the less runtime there is, the less fuel you're going to use. But you got to weigh that up against how many engines that you're going to be using. Now, with one engine, I thought with a raft this size, it might use more fuel and take way longer than if I just took two motors, because I knew two motors would propel this thing very easily. And so I've gone for the economical approach in terms of time, and I've made two motors, and that was always going to be my plan anyway. Now, the motors act independently for the most part, so you don't have to run both. But since time is a factor with my, I kind of value my time. I don't want to have to sit on the boat and kind of AFK endlessly while I wait to get from point A to point B. So having a second motor to save me some time personally is fantastic, because it saves me time with editing as well. So, A, you're welcome, and B, yeah, you're welcome. Anyway, so we're just adjusting the raft's course so that we are facing in the correct direction. Now, the engines will let us run either forward or backward, which is fine. So it wouldn't matter where I put the engines on the boat. It will let us go in two different directions, separately if I need to. But, as I said, I want our llama friend to be our living mascot figurehead at the front of the boat. And, all the motors and all the action is going to be down the back here. So that's the plan I have. I've got my course set. This is where I'm checking all the wind and I'm going, yeah, that's quite heavily into the wind in that direction. And I'm weighing the merits of, is it even worth trying to set a sail and try and make a little bit of headway in that direction. And with 3 sails, I could probably make a very slow progress in that direction if I had a lot of patience. But yeah, not feeling that with this session, or indeed any other session after it. So we're going with our plan to use the 2 motors that we just made. Now, the motors have to sit on 3 bits of wood with a 3-slot gap next to it. So we go 1 there, and we're going to reinforce these as we go because we don't want Mr. Sharky Nom Nom suddenly having an interest in the boat, a la chewing on my fresh bit of, planks that I just put down. Now, I couldn't remember at the time whether the motor required 2 or it required 3. Well, the brilliant part of having done this already, I already know it required 3. And there you go. Now, I can see it's got controls on it. There's actually 3 separate parts of the motor that you need to interact with. So you're actually going to need more than that. You're going to need a platform next to it so that you can actually access all of the things as part of the motor. But we'll get to the motor controls here in a moment. I've just sped this up a bit just to, get the last little bits of this little renovation completed, and then we'll go through how the motors work. Alright, there we go. We got ourselves a couple of motors. Now, our next jobby is to get them fueled up. Now, what do you think these things run on? That's right, they run on planks. We're not overly flush with wood at the moment, but obviously as we get underway we're going to be able to gather more as we go. So I'm allowing for that a little bit. That's why we're clearing our nets, and we're going to get them both fully fueled so that their respective fuel gauges are full and they won't accept any more wood. We're just checking our course now. We've got to change the direction because we want them to go forwards, so the lever has got to point in the direction you want them to go. And at the back is where you turn them on. Now, it provides like a universal thrust, so you don't have to worry about the engines being off-center causing the boat to, turn because, they're paddling one side only. I haven't had any issues with that before. I think pretty much wherever they're attached to the raft and running, they're just going to push the entire raft in whatever direction you've got the steering facing, or whatever the raft is facing is. So you can pretty much set them and forget them once they're running. Now we've got them running, we are adjusting our course so that we are heading directly at our next location marker. And I chopped a bit out here because it was a lot of me just clearing some nets, and I topped up the fuel once, not that long before the end of the cut bit. So we've still got heaps of fuel in our engines. I'm not actually slowing down for this thing. I'm just running into it because it's like running into an island, and until it starts sinking and gets out of the way, it will actually just stop your raft dead. So that's what I've done. Now, it is, however, causing my raft to change direction a bit, but we're going to fix that up in a moment. For the truly observant of you, you would have noticed there was something big on the horizon. Yeah, we're going to start turning towards that a bit more. And it's pretty big. Yeah. It's not a space station. No, not that sort of a game. No, it's not a space station. But there does appear to be a bit of a very narrow gap there that we're going to aim towards, because that island looks like it's a bit taller than anything that we've come across before. And I'm not understating that at all. It is a very, very tall island, as you are about to find out. The steering control is a bit like controlling the sail direction, but it's kind of spring-loaded, so it will kind of auto-center. When it gets close to the center and you let go, it'll just auto kind of snap back to the middle. It feels like it's kind of slow, or it's got a bit of weight to it. The sail adjusts pretty much like in very, very, very quick and easy to control increments, like when you're holding R and you're, sliding your mouse to control the facing. The steering wheel feels heavier than that, so it does take a little bit of getting used to in terms of making fine directions, but it doesn't take, it's not that difficult to get hold of. Just don't expect it to be exactly the same as the sail. It definitely feels a bit different to that. Now we're heading towards this gap still. The gap is too narrow to fit the raft all the way in, but that's not my goal here. I just want to get far enough in to minimize how far I need to swim. So this is kind of our entry point, or at least the entry point that I'm using to get onto Balboa Island. And it's like a very, very, very steep ravine. But if we go in there a little bit, there is actually a ramp up that can allow us access to the rest of the island. So we're just maneuvering into this tight little space. And as soon as we hit something, which is pretty much now, we are going to, of course, have an attack of the often maligned, and for good reasons, tapeworm. And we turned the motors off. We did delay getting the anchor down, so we did drift backwards a little bit there, but I think we're going to be okay here. We're just going to take stock of things as we wrap up the episode. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and to consider subscribing if you are not already subscribed. Until next time, my name is Rudimentary Rob. Thank you very much for watching and have yourself an absolutely fantastic day.